Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about an insane Talladega finish today. Absolutely incredible race. I'm going to talk about the finish. I'm going to talk about your winner, Watermelon Man. He leads only the final lap to get this win, and of course I'm going to give a little bit of props to the Fox Sports coverage. They actually did a pretty great job covering today's race at Talladega. We're going to talk about the entire race. We'll fit it all into this episode of Dirty Air, and it should be a pretty good one. But let's start out by talking about the winner and talking about the insane last lap here today at Talladega. And surprisingly, there were no cautions at the end of this race. There were no cautions in I believe, the entire final stage, or at least the last 40 laps. We had a green flag pit stop to end it, and then we went the entire way without any wrecks until the final lap of the race, which of course at that point the race would end if there was a caution thrown. So no caution, no overtime finish, which is somewhat rare for a Talladega finish, but nonetheless it was still extremely exciting. Hey, we didn't have to wait through red flags or cautions to get a great finish. We got it in regulation, and on lap 188 it was incredible. Ross Chastain did everything right, and at the end of these races, on the final lap of these races, the top couple of cars, maybe the top 3, 4, maybe 5 cars, maybe even more than that, typically do a lot of stuff right. Now, you obviously have drivers you can pinpoint and say, oh, they did that wrong, that was a mistake, that was not what they did right. But most of the time, in the top 5, or at least the top 3, those drivers did everything perfect to win. You can go back to the Daytona 500 between Cindric, Bubba Wallace, and Ryan Blaney, where they did everything right, even though it was Cindric that ultimately got the win. Even second place and third place did everything right. That's going to be kind of the same instance today. Ross Chastain, obviously your winner, did everything correct today, staying on the bottom lane and allowed everybody else to go up to the top lane to try to get the win. Now, obviously, if everybody had to stay on the bottom lane, then Erik Jones would have won the race. And then, of course, you had Erik Jones. He's got 6 cars that he's got to block, 6 different lanes. He was unable to block it, but did a great job, doing the best that he could. So, you had Jones doing mostly everything correct. You had Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson had to go up the racetrack. I mean, you're coming to the start-finish line. Kyle Larson had to make a move to try to win the race. Once again, the top, I'd say, 4 cars in this race did every single thing right, including your winner, obviously, Ross Chastain. Like Ross Chastain said in his interview, everybody kept going up the track and giving up position, so Ross Chastain took the lead and took the win there and edged out Austin Dillon. Well, it was about a car length or so ahead of Austin Dillon to win his second race of the season. So that's a pretty big win for that 2311, or not 2311, that Trackhouse Racing organization team. 2311 actually crashed out. Both cars crashed out on the last lap of this race, unfortunately for them. Seems like the luck has been kind of punching Bubba Wallace and Kurt Busch in the face so far this season. You have Kurt that gets a pretty decent finish every now and then. You have Bubba have bad luck every week. Then you have Kurt and those guys just having some bad luck, getting involved in a wreck on the final lap of this race once again. So that's frustrating for that organization. But once again, like I said, Ross Chastain, another win for that organization, second win of the year for that team. The second watermelon, Melon Man. Second time we've seen a watermelon get smashed on the front straightaway. It's exciting to see. He's one of the most exciting guys to win. I love watching Ross Chastain win because you're going to get a fun interview. You're going to get to see the watermelon smash. We had a great crowd at Talladega. They were cheering him on when all that happened. So a pretty good day for Chastain. And that's big for this team. I know it's a plate win, but 2 very different wins. He won earlier in the year at a road course and to win at the Super Speedway, which now takes up 6 races on the schedule. Of course, one of those being in the playoffs, which is very important. So it is a good momentum booster for this team. And like Ross Chastain said, they're really doing everything right. This organization, this Trackhouse Racing organization is doing everything right. Daniel Suarez didn't have the best day, but he's been running up front as well. They got the sponsorship situation completely figured out. They have sponsorships lined up. Chastain said in his interview, we had a lot of open spots for sponsorships going into this season. Now they're almost completely full and almost out of sponsorship slots. So that's certainly good for that organization. We're going to see if they can continue to do good. I don't see them slowing down at all. Obviously, they were running fast at the dirt last week. Both teams were for that organization, and then had a little bit of bad luck. Then, of course, the mechanical failure for Chastain there at the end. But talking about the finish, let's kind of go through the top 10 here. You guys know I like going through the top 10. I already mentioned Ross Chastain, talked a little bit about him, so we'll go on to second. Austin Dillon kind of snuck up there, got a second place finish. One of those drivers, like I said, did everything right, was able to stay there on the bottom lane. Couldn't quite get by Chastain, just didn't have the momentum, didn't have anybody pushing them. They were all kind of sliding around there. Nobody to draft with or push with to get by Chastain in the end. So solid day for the 3-car. That's actually the second day in a row the 3 cars finished second, because the 3-car finished second the day before with Larry McReynolds and Jeffrey Earnhardt in the minor league race, or the Xfinity race. on Saturday. Kyle Busch, I think he was maybe 10th or 11th going into the final lap and was able to come up and get third. Another one of those drivers that just stayed on the bottom line, just stuck to that bottom line, which was obviously the correct move. Same thing Ross Chastain, your winner, did, although Busch was obviously a little bit farther back, so he ended up finishing third, but that's still a good finish for him. He was running up front most of the day, working well with the other Toyotas, working well with Kurt at times, working well with Bubba Wallace at times. But overall, a third is a pretty decent day for Kyle Busch at a track like this where maybe he's not your top super speedway racer. Obviously, he's good everywhere else, but obviously at the super speedways doesn't really get those great finishes. But a third place today is obviously good, especially considering he barely dodged a wreck early on in the race, so he was almost taken out in that very early on. Was able to dodge that, and then of course dodge all the chaos that went on the final lap. Later on in the race, and was able to come up and finish third. Great day for him. Kyle Larson, once again, one of those drivers that moved to the top lane. It just didn't work out. It's like I said, for the top 3 or 4, sometimes it's a roll of the dice on who's going to get the win. And unfortunately for Larson, he was one of those drivers that it just didn't work out for him. He wasn't able to get a run. He wasn't able to get pushed with anybody or pushed by Ross Chastain there at the end. So it's unfortunate for Larson, but his first top 5 ever at a Daytona or Talladega race or a super speedway style race. So good for Kyle Larson to finally get that. They were kind of showing that stat all day. I thought he might win it, but they were showing that stat all day on the Fox broadcast. So it's cool to finally see him get that top 5. Martin Truex Jr., another one of those Toyotas, working very well together with Kyle Busch and the other Toyotas to get a top 5 finish. So we'll certainly take that. And it's a shame that 6th place, Erik Jones, did not end up in the top 5 because it's a shame. He runs so good. He did a great job blocking there at the end. Led those last, I'd say 10 or so laps. It might have been a few more than that, but he led all the way at the end of the race, but wasn't able to hold off those guys. I mean, they were just going to completely jump him going into the final couple of laps of this race. So it is a shame he didn't get a top 5, but still a pretty strong day for that team, that 43 team. They've been running decent all year, so for them to finally get a finish, to not wreck at the end of one of these races. At Talladega, I mean, what race? I mean, they've wrecked in every race this year for tire failures and all sorts of stuff. Who would have guessed the race they would have finished would have been Talladega, right? But overall, just a great run for Erik Jones and that 43 team. Hopefully they can take this momentum, maybe run a little bit better. It's obviously good to get a points day today. Chase Elliott working well once again with the Hendrick Chevrolets. They were up front for a while. It was 1, 2, 3, 4 with Hendrick Chevrolets for quite some time, but Chase Elliott ended up finishing in the 7th position, so a good day for him. Michael McDowell, your 2021 Daytona 500 winner, seems to be always running up front at these super speedway races, but that is actually his 2nd top 10 in a row. He finished in the top 10 last week at Bristol Dirt too. So like I said last week, anytime the 34 Ford and the Michael McDowell organization, the Michael McDowell team gets inside of the top 10, that's a good finish for them. That's a good day, so they can definitely take that and run with it. Another one of those Hendrick Chevrolets, Alex Bowman, ended up finishing 9th, and of course Kevin Harvick, who was working well with other drivers as well. Kevin Harvick was able to salvage a top 10 finish, finishing in the 10th position in the 4 car. So a good day for him. I want to give a props to I'm done talking about the race now, done talking about the top 10. I want to give a props to the Fox Sports coverage because they did a great job. There's been a lot of heat if you check social media. And if you just kind of watch the broadcast, you can tell it definitely didn't seem to be the best. There were a lot of skits. There was a lot of cringy stuff going on, which is not what we like to see when you're trying to take a sport serious. But I want to give props to the Fox Sports coverage. This race went very well. Things played out perfect today. This is the last race on Fox, except for the Charlotte race a little bit later on. But the Fox kind of, grumble of races kind of comes to an end. Most of the races will be on Fox Sports 1 or NBC's portion when they pick up later on, but it was a great way to end out the Fox coverage. Did an incredible job. The pre-race was great. Obviously, they need to be at the track every week would be nice. I hope they continue that even on the Fox Sports 1 part of the broadcast next week at Dover. Hopefully they have the commentators and the pre-race reporters at the racetrack. That's obviously exciting. That kind of hyped me up. I was really excited going into this race, just listening to those guys talk with fans behind them and hearing the fans cheer. That was exciting, kind of what they used to do on the broadcast. I think that should continue going into next season and obviously the remainder of the portion that they hold for this year. Dale Jr. did an incredible job in the booth. Him and Clint Boyer clicked very well. Of course, Mike Joy added to that. And Dale Jr. is quite a historian himself, so that worked well with Mike Joy. And then, Dale Jr., Clint Boyer worked very well together. The broadcast was great during the race. Like I said, the pre-race was good. The booth was good. The commentary during the race was exciting. It was good. They knew what was going on. They explained everything very well to the fans, especially the fans that maybe didn't know a certain part of this race or didn't know that was going to happen. And we saw a lot, and they explained a few things to me, too, which was very interesting. And I was glad to see that for sure. But a great day for NASCAR. The race was very timed very well. It didn't last very long at all. I mean, the race lasted till I believe it was a little before 7 o'clock when the race finished. It started at 3, so great timing. We didn't have those long red flags at the end of some of these plate races, which can be kind of aggravating sometimes. Just overall, a great day for Ross Chastain. Great day for me as a Kyle Busch fan to finish third. And then, of course, a pretty good day at Talladega. So we do go to Dover next week, and I do want to mention a couple of drivers, or one driver in particular, that I do want to watch in Dover next week. So tune into Dirty Air next week after the race, but I want you to watch next week in Dover. I want you to watch Aric Almirola, because he's extremely fast at those 1 mile racetracks. He won New Hampshire last year, and he runs up front and very decent at Dover before. Just had some bad luck that kind of comes into the play sometimes, maybe makes a few mistakes, but he is really fast at the other 1 mile track, New Hampshire, but he is pretty decent and very consistent at Dover. Aric Almirola's final season. I want you guys to watch him going into Dover, Delaware next week, and of course, tune into Dirty Air. Watch the show next week. Like and subscribe if you like the video, of course. And of course, after an insane Talladega finish and after a third place finish for Kyle Busch, let's get rowdy.